Hey Who fans, welcome to the Big Blue Box podcast. My name's Gary.
And this is not Adam, this is Phil.
Welcome to episode 189.
Have you ever thought what it's like to be wanderers in the fourth dimension?
Nobody in the universe can do what we're doing.
I've reversed the polarity of the neutron flow, so the TARDIS should be free of the force field now.
There's no point in being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes.
The trouble with time travel is one never seems to find the time.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding, etc., etc.
I am the Doctor!
Great men are forged in fire. It is the privilege of lesser men to light the flame.
I'm the Doctor. This is Rose Tyler. She's my +1. Is that all right?
That would be me.
Hello. Surprise!
Boom!
Etc. I'm the Doctor. Do everything I tell you. Don't ask stupid questions. And don't wander off.
How can you kidneys? I don't like the colour.
Howdy, howdy do, Who fans. Hope you've all had a cracking week and that you've all managed to do something Doctor Who related. As you can probably tell, my solo run has come to an end. Another force within the Doctor Who podcasting community has come to my rescue.
Hooray!
Yay. Hello, Phil.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, sir?
Excellent. Yes, very well indeed. Very well indeed. Yes, unfortunately, I haven't done anything too much Doctor Who related so far this week, but hey, it's only Wednesday.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Plenty of time yet.
Yep.
So, those of you that don't know Phil comes from a ramshackle of a podcast, apparently. Yeah,
that's how we describe ourselves, yeah.
So the Who's He podcast, which you would have seen rattling around the iTunes and podcast networks all over the place for a good while now. How long have you been doing this for?
It's over 7 years now,
crikey Moses.
Yeah, I don't know how we've managed to keep it going, if I'm perfectly honest.
I have that same thought too, Phil, all the time. So tell us about who you are, why you started your podcast, and so on.
Well, I think basically from the Doctor Who angle, I think the majority of us podcasters probably started off listening to things like Radio Free Skaro back in the day, because they were about the only... I'll say that they weren't the only Doctor Who podcast, but one of the more well-known podcasts.
Sure. Yeah.
At the time. So we had an idea to do a podcast, but not necessarily a Doctor Who podcast. It was actually going to be, originally the idea we had was to, the three of us was to bring, it's like a news podcast. So we'd bring a random news item to the show. Neither one of us would know what the other was bringing.
Oh, nice.
And we just start discussing it. But then that sort of changed into actually sort of maybe talking about the old ITC programs from the 1960s, things like like Man in a Suitcase and
right.
Random Hopkirk Deceased. And I think we tried doing that, but our third and seldom heard podcast member Tony forgot to watch it one week, so we thought this is going to be the shape of things to come. So we thought, right, what do we know? Doctor Who. So we said, well, what the hell? We'll do what everyone else is doing. We'll do a Doctor Who podcast.
Right.
So there you go. So 7 years later, it has sort of changed over the years. It was originally just a monthly podcast. We were just doing commentaries. Then it's turned into a weekly podcast. And now we're every other week instead. So cool. Mainly just to counter the fact there's not much Who on the telly these days.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
And news is very dry as well at the minute.
Yes, indeed. Chibnall runs a very, very tight ship.
Yes. So you're up to episode 300 now. Crikey.
Yes, I say that's what we've really sort of been up to recently. That just came out this week, actually. So, it's sort of, I say 300 of the, I sound a bit like Big Finish here, actually, from our main range, I should say. So,
very nice. Yeah.
Yes, because we've done a few specials over the years as well. And also I started doing video podcasts
I've seen
as well. Yep. Yes. So, excuse me. So they're out on YouTube and also on our normal podcast feed as well. But that's more of a, so I can say that's more of a solo effort on my part, really. But it's just something I've always been interested in doing, and also sort of mucking around with things like green screen as well, which So I've used a lot of that, and also doing now and again silly made up characters as well. So. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun for me. Well, it's the same for people watching it, but I find it a lot of fun. So.
No, it's really cool. So you guys can probably tell that Phil's been around the block with podcasting, should we say?
Yes.
So thank you so much for jumping on board, mate. And
it's okay.
And keep me company. It's really cool. So I've listened to your podcast for ages. It was one of the first ones that, because we've only been going for, I say only, we've been going for about 4 years now, which is, well, roughly half the time that you've been going to. So when I started out, it was there was one, you interviewed a guy from that podcast a few weeks back, James from the Doctor Who podcast.
That's correct, yeah.
So it was that one, Radio Free Scaro. There was another one, I can't remember the name of it. There was your one and a couple of others. And so your voice was one of the first ones when I started listening, because I found podcasts just accidentally through iTunes years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is pretty good, this podcasting thing. I wonder if there's any Star Wars podcasts. There's 50 Star Wars podcasts. And I thought, I can't be any Doctor Who podcasts, surely. Did a search, and there you all were. There was, a good sort of half dozen of you that were already sort of in the flow of doing it. So
yes, exactly. I think when we first went live, there's and it's still going, actually, something called the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.
Yes.
I think when I originally joined, there was probably about 40 odd Doctor Who podcasts on there. And after we came on, more and more followed. But a lot of those original ones, and I think a lot of them are just sort of fallen by the wayside, which is a pity. Most of them I listen to as well. But obviously, I think people's interest in the show comes and sort of ebbs and flows, really. And plus the fact, I think real life gets in the way, to be honest. And that's one of the reasons why we've now gone every other week, is to sort of give us a bit more time to watch what we're going to review or read what we're going to review. Right. So just gives us a bit of breathing space.
Yeah, no region.
Yeah.
And so when I listened to one of your shows recently, that one with James, actually, when you were you guys were talking about Doctor Who podcasts in general, and is it still relevant and so on. What was your sort of final view on that? Because I think when you very first kicked off the interview with James, you said something like, podcasting was a very big thing for Doctor Who back in the day. Maybe there were more of them, a few years back.
Oh yeah, there certainly were.
Yeah,
certainly were.
And your kind of theme for that interview was, is it relevant today? Should people, start a Doctor Who podcast possibly, or is it worth doing, sort of thing? What was your? I didn't hear a definitive yes or no at the end of there. Do you think it's still a thing?
Yeah, I think it's still. I think we sort of agreed at the end that it's still a thing, but whether it's still a thing in its current format,
right,
where people will, like we're doing there, we're sitting down recording. You'll edit all together, put it out on an RSS feed, load it up to iTunes. I think it will still be there, but maybe just more sort of like you can live stream stuff over Facebook now,
right?
Things like that. So because obviously when we started, things like Twitter and Facebook were really still in their infancy, and not really swamped as it is now. It used to be a really, really useful communication tool to getting your voice out there, but now I've found it's not quite as useful as it used to be. I think Facebook certainly is, but Twitter, no. There's so much, how can I put it, so much noise on Twitter. I think it's difficult to get your voice heard above everyone else, really.
It's difficult to cut through the noise, as you say.
It is. Yeah. Unless you're already well established. I think, people like, say, Radio Free Scaro, for argument's sake, they've been there since the inception of podcasting, basically, so they've already got a massive fan base, and they got thousands and thousands of followers. So I think once you're there, you got your foot in the door. It's at the beginning. I think you're okay, but sort of like people like, I know we're going 7 years, but I still feel like a bit of a Johnny come lately compared to some of the others, you know. So So, but even after 7 years, I think it's still difficult to sort of like to get your voice heard.
Yes.
You know. So I think podcasting will be there, but it will. You know, I think it might evolve into something else.
Interesting you say that, yeah. Because I asked, I did like an opinion thing on Twitter earlier today, actually, asking people if they wanted to see any more sort of additional content as well, you know, alongside the weekly show or the articles that we put out.
Yeah.
And pretty much everyone said, yep, live streaming, videos, that kind of thing. So it's definitely, I think, because I think you're doing it the right way. I think if by running these video shows alongside your regular podcast, I think that's the right way to do it. And possibly one day there's sort of overlap. You'd find if you're really into the video stuff, you might do more of that. And
exactly. I think I did actually ask our listeners, because I was putting out the video stuff, and originally it was only on YouTube. I'd start our own YouTube channel, and it wasn't getting as many views as I would have expected, to be honest, or hoped rather. And when I sort of put the question out there, you know, is anybody interested in this? And a lot of response I got back from long-term listeners of the podcast saying, well, some just said, no, it doesn't interest me, or, well, I don't get time to watch live streaming things. They like to download things and listen to it when they can. So at that point, that's when I decided to upload them to our normal podcast feed. And I've had we've had a lot more views or downloads using that medium instead, funny enough. Yeah. Because again, YouTube's another crowded marketplace.
Absolutely.
And I think from my point of view, because I was I spend a lot of time, so I write it, film it, edit it all together, then sort of put it out there, and it takes a lot of time. That's why I only do one every couple of months, you know, if I'm lucky.
Right.
So to put that effort into it, I want people to see it. And I think because on YouTube, people are more interested in watching somebody fall off a skateboard or something. They will get millions of hits. That's all. That someone having a nasty accident. People want to look at. So
kids today, Phil. Hey.
I know. They're born today.
I know what you mean, though. I know what you're trying. Yeah, it's a very crowded. Because we were talking about the number of people doing Doctor Who podcasts. There's a huge amount of people doing Doctor Who YouTube stuff, like Who-tubers, as they're called. There's a huge amount of. And I find people running Doctor Who YouTube channels all the time. I mean, I came across one the other day. There was a lad, I can't remember the name of the YouTube channel. It was, the name of the channel was Torchwood related. I think his name was Torchwood Boy. I think that was the name of the channel. And I'd never heard of him before, never seen any of his videos. But he's been going for like 4 years. He's got like, like 10,000 subs, and he's got like 500,000 views across his videos. And I think, wow, there's still loads of content out there that I've never even seen before, but it's clearly going strong. So,
I think if you look at a lot of the Doctor Who content on there, there's an awful lot of like review stuff on there. And I think that the thing with YouTube, you've got to be so careful with the copyrighted content. I mean, use anything from the BBC really at your peril. And because I frequently use clips, and the amount of times you've infringed the copyright, and they let you continue to use it, but at the end of the day, that's not going to be seen across the globe. It's still going to restrict it in certain countries or regions. So, so whatever I do now, I put it out as privately, so no one can see it publicly. See what if I get any flags come up, then I have to go and edit those clips down further. So I've got this thing that is the fair use rule. Usually it's around about 30 seconds. What I found with a lot of BBC content, if you're going to use it, about 20 seconds.
I see.
It's about before you get a copyright flag. That's what I noticed. Yeah, but I think if you talk over it, if you put a commentary over the top, then I think it's a bit different because it's not in its pure form, as it were. So, but if I'm going to show a clip, it's usually to illustrate something. So I tend not to talk over it.
Right.
So that's probably why I get into trouble with the copyright.
Get in trouble, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good tip, though. Let me just write this down. Thank you. Very nice. Okay. Okay, so tell us about how you got into, a bit of putting you on the spot a little bit, but tell us about how you first got into Who, I guess, way before you started podcasting. You ever dreamt about doing a podcast? What got you into, when was your first Who experience? Who's your doctor?
Well, it's funny, really, because really, I grew up in the 70s, and I was born in 1970, and I suppose I should by right say my doctor is Tom Baker, but it's not. It's actually John Pertwee, because it's my first memory of watching Doctor Who, and also one of my first memories of watching television. Full stop.
Oh, nice, right?
Actually, and it was actually. I couldn't tell what episode it was, but it was an episode from The Green Death.
Maggots,
right, yes.
Right.
So that's what I can clearly remember were the maggots,
okay.
And then and I can remember things like the Monster of Peladon and things like that. So I always remember Alpha Centauri when I was a kid. I can remember Planet of the Spiders, vividly remember that one.
Oh, nice,
and,
right.
And regenerating into Tom Baker. So I can always remember those things. But I think since that point I was always fascinated by Pertwee.
Okay.
And when the first the Doctor Who Weekly came out, which is probably late 70s, I think it's late 70s, that one with Tom Baker on the front with the Dalek.
Oh yes, yep.
They did a little article on John Pertwee on there, and they described it as James Bond style action. Right.
Okay.
Because I suppose in a funny way it's true, because he did the Venusian Aikido. He was a man of action. Yeah, the gadgets and that kind of thing. So so ever since then I want to know more about Pertwee. So I think the first video I ever bought when I sort of could afford my own video player, a recorder rather. This dates me VHS. It was Day of the Daleks was the first VHS I bought out of my own pocket.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So it's so I was always been fascinated by Pertwee, but I used to go to the library and get all the Target books, usually Pertwee related ones as well, because they were never repeated back then. It was that Target books were the only access you had to old Who stories.
Right, I read you. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I just absorbed them, really.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. So did you pick up Doctor Who magazine last month then? Because that was a Pertwee special.
Do you know what? With the Doctor Who magazine, I'm very, very sporadic when it comes to reading that. It's one of those things. If I happen to be if I got on a long journey or something, I'll pick up a magazine and I'll get Doctor Who monthly. So that's what I would usually do. But I'm not a subscriber. Put it that way.
Yeah, I read you. So Adam subscribes and he gets it every month without fail, and it gets thrust through the post box. It's always ripped and bent and all the rest of it, which he complains about. But I'm exactly the same. I'll pick it up especially if I'm going on a journey, if I'm traveling, I'll have it. Yeah. Or if there's an article that I really want to. So the last one I picked up, I think, was the McCoy edition, which is a few months back, shortly after they changed editor and stuff. But yeah, so apparently there was a good Pertwee interview in the last month.
Oh, so, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I might just see if I can track that one down then.
Yeah.
Actually, especially something new as well, because obviously, usually, everything about Pertwee's now been heard or read, really. So if anyone's got any sort of fresh insight into him and his time on the show, then yeah, I'm there.
Yeah,
I'm there,
go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're having a bit of a classic run at the minute, because last month was Pertwee. This month it's Tom Baker.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think really, I think that there's been a lot of a kind of a backlash from the old fans. I'll probably say sort of like the middle-aged fans like myself, really, who don't like the changes that have been made to Doctor Who Monthly. And at the moment, I can't really comment on that because I haven't read it. So, Yeah.
I think I know what you mean. Is this the Time team?
The Time team, yes. Yes. They think that their demographic is not being represented, but really, if you want your demographic to be represented, there are other ways, like blogs, podcasting.
Yes.
If you want to get your opinion out there, there are other ways to do it rather than just hassle some people working at a magazine.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting when that all sort of kicked off on Twitter, because as the last thing I expected to happen, really, because for the last, I don't know, not that I read it that regularly, but the last sort of year, I suppose, people have been asking for some improvements or updates to the magazine, and then they started doing it, and then there's a big backlash, and it's like, oh, here we go.
Well, I say you can't please everybody all of the time, you know that old adage. But I think that's one of the sort of pitfalls of social media, really, because it's that instant whinge you can get out there. You can make your voice heard, and it's not always constructive either. It's just like an instant download from your brain, basically, and there's no real sort of thought process goes into it with a lot of people. They just say the first thing that comes into their minds, and it can be, offensive, or some people just do it to spark debate, or which is sometimes good, but sometimes it just descends into a slanging match, and it gets very abusive.
Seen a few of those.
Yes, I think, and it's very, people are very brave sitting behind a keyboard doing that kind of thing. I just makes you wonder if they would do that if they were sitting opposite someone.
Oh yes, yeah. We'll leave it there.
Yes, indeed.
We'll leave that
before
one
I
there.
say something inflammatory.
Before we move on to news and so on, and we'll recap this at the end as well. But where can people find you online and etc.?
Yep. Okay. Well, you can. Our website is www.whos-he-podcast.co.uk. If you search for us on iTunes, you can find us there as well. You can also find us on YouTube if you Google Who's He Video Podcast, and we're on Facebook. Who's He Podcast? We've got a group and a page, and you also find us on Twitter as well, and our handle is whos_he_podcast.
Lovely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let's land it.
Free advertising over. Yes.
No worries, mate. All right, let's land this and we'll see what's going on. Rightio, first up, something interesting has kicked off in the streaming world yesterday. If you're listening to this on Friday, we're recording this on Wednesday. Is it Wednesday?
Yes, Wednesday the 30th.
Yep. Wednesday the 30th. So yesterday, Tuesday the 29th, the Classic Who Marathon kicked off over on the streaming platform Twitch. So they started with the with Hartnell's era, An Unearthly Child, and it's continuing tonight. So they're playing 3 stories a night, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. And this was sort of came out of nowhere, really. So the last thing that I expected Twitch to do. Any of our listeners that are not aware of what Twitch is, it's essentially a live streaming platform predominantly for gamers. So you'll see a lot of video gamers streaming their gameplay and all that on there. And they have on occasion in the past, they've done these sort of presenter shows, or they've hosted sort of similar things. But it just seems to me like classic Doctor Who is the last thing that I'd expect to see on a very modern streaming platform like this. I would have thought they would have gone in with modern Who from sort of Eccleston onwards, but it seemed to have gone down really well. When I looked at it, I watched An Unearthly Child last night when that kicked off. And I think about halfway through, it was streaming to about, 18,000 viewers.
Right, okay.
Which is really good for, a gaming platform, essentially. It's not really sort of designed for, well, I say not designed, it's not, I don't think the mission statement when they first launched it was to stream, 60s and 70s TV programs.
No, so. Exactly. I mean, it's a good thing they've done it though, because obviously, new Who, it's available currently. Available on Netflix. So I understand that's shortly coming to an end. I know certainly in the US, I'm not too sure about the UK, but I know that that's coming to an end. But as regards to sort of like classic Who, you only had the about a year or so ago, it's not longer than that now really, was the Horror Channel. UK. They were showing classic Who, but they did tend to stick to a lot of the colour ones, to be honest, sort of like later 70s and 80s Who. But that was only if you didn't have the DVDs, that was the only place you could get your Classic Who fix, really.
Mm-hmm.
So to see this pop up on Twitch, it's, as you say, it's very unusual, very unusual. And you probably say might not be the target audience, to be honest. Gamers, but no, fine. I mean, if it's a success, I mean, hopefully, was it 500 episodes they're going to stream?
That's
on his
right.
episodes? Yeah. So let's hope it's successful. Really,
I hope so.
Just to prove more than anything else that modern audiences aren't just interested in modern television.
That's right. And I hope it does sort of spark an interest in Twitch as not just solely for video gamers, but they can run these things. Because I can imagine some really cool, maybe like a Blake 7 run through, or some of those older shows. I think they are trying. I think the one of the reasons behind it is for them to sort of branch the platform out so it doesn't feel like a little contained bubble of just teenage gamers over here in this part of the world that are doing their own thing. I think they're trying to. Because I think over the years, I don't want to go too deep, but I think over the years, the sort of the classic television model has changed over the years. You know what I mean? It's not just those terrestrial channels. It's now, with Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and all that sort of stuff and Sky Catch Up, it is very much more of a, you don't just sit down, you don't look in the radio time to when something's on, and then you make sure you're on the sofa to watch it and that's it, or you've missed it. It's constantly evolving. And I think Twitch are trying to grab a little nugget of that away from the big streaming services. So the guy that set it all up, or sort of spearheaded this, I suppose, essentially said they're always looking at new ways to reach new audiences and make it easier for fans to engage with popular shows. And he says Doctor Who in particular has a great tradition of pioneering new technologies from early VHS, Phil, all the way through to the new digital services of today. And it says Twitch is another example as a brilliant service that they can reach over 15 million active daily users. So if there's that many people that are on it already, why not, shove a bit of Classic Who down their throat?
Yeah, precisely. It sounds almost like force feeding them, actually.
A little bit, yeah. One thing that is quite strange, though, is alongside Twitch, you also have the real-time chat that goes with it. So that can be a little bit strange for Classic Who. So for video gamers, it's very much a case of they're chatting about what the streamer's talking about and what's happening in the game. To have a chat run alongside Classic Who is very surreal. So there's people that are chiming in every second, like, what's Hartnell doing? And, why is William Russell doing this? And it's very strange, but it's a fun experience.
Yeah, so it could be quite entertaining trying to catch some of those comments as they pop up, actually. So it's almost like a running commentary.
It is. Yeah.
It's
weird.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Okay, good.
So as Phil said, it's running it's running 500 episodes, so it's most of Classic Who. It's not quite all of it. Strangely, I'm not sure that they're doing the 5 Doctors, and there's another couple that they're not doing. I'm not sure why, but it's most
rights issue or something, is it?
Probably, yeah. It normally is.
Yes, it indeed.
Next bit of news before we move on to merch then. What did you think of Class, Phil? Be honest.
Well, honestly, I think I was one of the few that actually liked it. To be honest, it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there was enough there to build on. So when it got cancelled, I was sort of I sort of guessed it was really because the way the BBC treated it, really, there was hardly any promotional material for it whatsoever. And when it did make it onto terrestrial television, they buried it and were putting out double episodes in one night. And I think it seemed like in a hurry to get it over and done with, which I think was a shame. I think it has been commented on, and I kind of agree. If you're going to have a spin-off show from from the parent show, it usually features characters from the parent show, like Torchwood did, for argument's sake. So I think in this the spin-off, the main character from this character from Doctor Who was Coal Hill School, really.
That's true.
That was the carryover. So you had all the characters in it that had nothing to do with Who previously, and obviously you had Peter Capaldi turned up in the first episode to sort of like say, yes, this is legit. This is in the Doctor Who universe.
Yeah.
But after that, they were left to stand on their own feet, and I don't think it went to some interesting places, and I thought it kept me interested from the point of view I'm in my mid-40s and this isn't targeted at my age group at all. Mm-hmm. This is targeted at young adults, so it's featuring sort of like the sort of young adult issues and that kind of thing. But I still found it a really, really entertaining series.
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So Adam and I have spoken at length about our dislike for Class. Yes, and I always try very, very hard not to kind of slam it too much because, at the end of the day, it was they had a go at it. Essentially, it was there wasn't much going on in the way of Who other than we know we have Big Finish that sort of trickle along nicely and they're always putting stuff out. But in terms of mainstream, there wasn't anything going on with Who, other than the main series, because gone are the days where you had Torchwood and Sarah Jane, so on, that were out on the standard, popular channels, should I say. So they gave it a go. It's just, for me, I'll be honest with you, it was the writing and the characters. It just seemed, and I'm like a broken record with this, but it felt to me like it should have been. I almost wish they would have developed it into its own standalone universe. It felt like it was sort of shoehorned into Doctor Who unnecessarily, and I don't know. It felt like they had to have the big epic cameo from Capaldi, like you say, just to make it seem legit that it's Doctor Who. And then after that, it sort of went on its merry way and didn't really reference enough from the Who universe, really. It seemed to want to be its own thing, but was almost constrained by, the shackles of being Who. Whereas I think if they developed it as its own new entity, if Patrick Ness would have, unhinged, taken it away from Who, then it might have had a bit of a chance. But I think fans were so desperate to see just a little bit more from the Who universe fed into it. I don't know, but
I think I mean, obviously, if you take something like Torchwood, that really did stand on its own 2 feet. All you had from that was really Captain Jack. We knew from that point of view it was set in the Who universe, but there wasn't a lot of, I can put sort of content carried over from Who into that series. So it did stand, or on occasion, stand on its own 2 feet. I'm not a massive Torchwood fan, if I'm perfectly honest. But I think this is what they kind of did with Class, but it didn't. I think the problem was it didn't have a Captain Jack. I think if it had that character that carried over from Who into the spin-off, I think maybe people might have accepted it a bit more. Because I think, as we said, that the Capaldi cameo was to make it legit. This is the Who universe. It's in Coal Hill School, which is previously seen in Doctor Who, but that was it. That was it really. So all the characters after that first episode were Class characters. They weren't from Who at all. So I think it was a brave thing to do. I thought it was interesting, and I think it did deserve to carry on in its TV form. But it's going to be carried on in a different format, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. So if you were a fan of Class, Phil, as you clearly were, and you probably guessed this from a while off now, but Big Finish have scooped up Class. And we'll be putting out a couple of stories, 6 stories across 2 volumes.
6 stories, yes.
Yeah. Kicking off in August, which is not too far away, a few months. And, so it's coming back. I mean, a lot of people did say that when it was cancelled. A lot of people, immediately said, well, Big Finish will probably pick this up and run with it for a while, which they've done. And I was when you mentioned earlier that they needed somebody to carry over into Class, I couldn't really think of anybody in sort of newer Who that could do it. And what about a previous companion? How would that work out? And lo and behold, got Ace.
Yes, that did surprise me. Actually.
Yes.
Yeah, that did surprise me. But
Ace!
well,
it's a bit of a surprise.
It's a surprise, but I think it's a good call, to be honest.
Absolutely, yes.
Because I think that's what Class actually needed. Considering what the intentions were for Sarah Jane Avengers, had it continued, they were going to introduce Ace into the story. And basically, Big Finish just picked that idea and introduced that character into a different spin-off show. And I think it could work. I'll be really interested to hear it. Really will be. Yeah,
and I'll be honest with you. I think that Class, if it's going to work anywhere, it'll be Big Finish, because they do have a reputation of really making things that weren't necessarily fan favourites and making them work really well on audio.
Yes.
So I'm not really one for lists or, over popularity or anything like that. But, I would say that out of all of classic Who, there are a couple of Doctors that aren't always viewed in the best light as some of the more popular ones. So Colin Baker, for example, is just brilliant in his Big Finish stories.
Yes,
really
is.
Good.
Yeah, I think if there's any sort of detractors of Colin Baker's Who output on television, I mean, I'd seriously advise you to go and listen to his Big Finish output, because it's how he wanted to play the Doctor.
Yes,
basically.
Yeah.
And you can, obviously, you don't have to look at that horrible costume he was made to wear as well. I know that's something else he didn't like as well. So he didn't envisage this horrible patchwork quilt of an outfit he had to wear. So, I say we just recently, because we reviewed Big Finish on the podcast, but we're not really up to date, because we're both of us, myself and Paul, we're very sort of latecomers to Big Finish.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. So we're reviewing some very, very old stories, and we just reviewed the Marion Conspiracy, which was introduced a Sixth Doctor, Big Finish Sixth Doctor companion, Evelyn Smythe.
Oh yeah,
who is I listened to, that's about the third story we've listened to with that character, and she's now my favourite Who companion.
Oh, nice, right?
Yeah, I think the character's wonderful. I really do, and a really good foil for Colin Baker's Doctor. And I think that's what Big Finish do. They don't just stick to established characters; they will introduce their own mythology into it as well.
Sure,
but at the same time, trying to keep it. I hate using that word canon, but trying to keep the continuity and the canon there, really, but adding their own mythos to it. And I think what they've been doing is utterly brilliant. But they've also extended that out to so many other different things as well. I think they're even doing like Star Cops now as well, aren't they?
Yeah, just recently they've put that.
Yeah. So they've done like things like Saffron Steel, and I think they did some old 2000 AD stuff years ago, like Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog. Things like that. So, so it's a veritable cavalcade of content they've got. It really is.
Yeah.
So, and what they've done, I haven't listened to any of the Torchwood stuff recently, but by all accounts, it's really, really good.
It is. Yeah. The recent one, the Torchwood Believe, the latest story is very, very good. Really, right, top-notch writing and, worthy of sort of TV stuff, really. If not better. So I would say, because my personal view was Class just didn't have the solid writing behind it, more so for the characters than anything else, to sort of flesh them out enough and make the viewer sort of connect with them and have empathy and so on. I really believe that the writers at Big Finish have the ability to do that. In some cases, better than some of the TV writers. So I'm with you on that one. I think it could be really good on Big Finish.
Yeah, and fingers crossed it is. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And the inclusion of Ace as well. She's such a cool, popular companion from classic Who. There's not a lot of people that don't like Ace. So
precisely. Yeah,
I think it should be good. So it's just simply called Class: The Audio Adventures. And as we said, it's over 2 volumes starting in August, and I assume it'll be up for pre-order in the next month over on Big Finish. So
yes, no doubt.
Look forward to seeing what's going on with that.
Yes,
Indeed. Right, that's going to do for news. Let's get our metal friend in, see what he's got.
Merch corner. Merch corner. Merch corner.
I don't know whether to be impressed or disgusted.
It's a bit rubbish, but it's pretty. It's very pretty.
So there's a new fan e-zine that's just gone up for sale. Have you heard of this before, Phil? Hootopia, sorry.
Do you know what? I haven't, and I'm actually sort of secretly pleased that there's still like fan production magazines out there. Really, that's it's almost sort of underground, if you know what I mean, like the like the fanzines of old.
Yes.
Really,
yeah. It's got that vibe about it, hasn't it? It's, I hadn't heard of this either until I think we spoke about it briefly ages ago. I'm not sure how often they put an issue out, but we spoke about issue 31. I can't remember when it was out. It's a while ago, and I'd never heard of it before that. But it's actually quite cool. So what they do is it's an e-zine, so it's a digital only PDF kind of thing, and they pack it with so much stuff. There was a magazine, a fan-made magazine, I think, that was out at some point last year. You might have picked it up. It was called Warp.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It was a really thick, packed to the rafters, content-wise magazine. It was a bit like sort of 25 issues of Doctor Who magazine all in one. And this is
that's like a typical fanzine. Don't know when to stop.
Yeah, it's just like submission after submission.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the same thing, but it's just in digital format only. And the way that they sort of market themselves is it's a magazine by fans for the fans. So they rarely sort of venture into anything that's too mainstream, if you like. You know, rarely do you see an interview with somebody that's actually in Modern Who or, you know, stuff like that. But they do manage to bag a few interviews that are people that are involved with the show. And pretty good. So a few of the things that are available in this issue, I think it's only just gone or is about to go live. Where are we? Oh no, you can get it now. So it's just come out now. It's a £5 basically, and you can buy it through the website. I'll give you a link in the show notes for it. And it just seems to be loads of stuff. So just to pick a few things out, Douglas Adams and Doctor Who. So this is a look at all of the novelizations from Douglas Adams and his work with Doctor Who. There's a review of the Series 10 finale, The Doctor Falls. Now, what I find interesting about that is it's not timely, so they weren't really bothered about, you know, catching the wave, if you like, when it was out. So they've gone back and re-looked at that. There's a couple of people looking at Twice Upon a Time as well. There's a review of This Town Will Never Let Go, where they look at the Lawrence Miles Faction Paradox novel. There's a review of the book Script Doctor by Andrew Cartmel, which is a great book. There's audio archives. There's looking at all the covers from some of the Hamish Crawford, looking at all the book cover artworks for Doctor Who over the years. There's a review of the Class novels. There's a look back at the Gunfighters. So, as you can probably tell, they just take a range of themes and ideas from classic Who and new Who, and they're not really bothered about if it was, you know, something that came out last week or that in the last series, whatever. They'll just look at anything that takes their fancy. So it's essentially just Who fans writing about what they like, you know, or if they feel like they've got an opinion on something, it doesn't have to be recent. And so I think this looks really good. I picked the last one up, and it took me quite a while to read through it. It was packed for content. I think this one's going to be the same. And so it's a £5, and it's out now. I'll put a link somewhere, but yeah.
Oh, good. I say, you know, it's just reading, you know, what's in this issue. It does. There's a lot to get through. So it sounds like on the face of it, it sounds like a £5 well spent. Yeah.
And it is only a £5. It's not too bad. I mean, if you think about it, a single issue of Doctor Who magazine is what, $5.99 now?
Something like that, yeah.
And this has got, you know, like 5 times the amount of stuff in it. So, not too bad. And lastly, speaking of Doctor Who magazine, the new one's about to launch. I think subscribers have got it. Some of them have got it through their letterbox today. Otherwise, you'll be able to pick it up yesterday if you're listening to this on Friday, aka today.
Yep.
A little bit timey-wimey, but yeah.
That wasn't confusing, no.
No. So, yeah, issue 526 is hitting the shelves now, and it's a Tom Baker special, which is pretty good because I'm liking the classic run with Doctor Who magazine at the moment. Because there's naff all to talk about.
Well, that's not got much choice, really, have they?
Yeah, they're on the ropes a little bit with content at the minute.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned earlier, last month was the John Pertwee special. This one's the Tom Baker. I've no idea what they're going to do next month. It's probably going to be... They haven't done a Hartnell one for a while, or a Troughton one, so that might follow, something like that. But, yeah, because, as we said earlier, you and I don't sub to this, but we pick it up now and then. But I think, yeah, this one might be quite cool because I really like it when Who magazine doesn't focus only on Capaldi or
exactly,
or Jodie Whittaker. I like it when they sort of dive back into the archives and have a look. And this has actually got a new interview with Tom Baker as well, so it's not just a case of they've resurfaced a load of old stuff. So
rehash quotes and whatever. Yeah.
So that's quite cool. And it'll also be interesting to have a look at this new Time Team.
Yes,
thing.
Indeed.
That's going on.
That's divided opinion.
Yes.
So,
They've also got a little preview for the upcoming Blu-ray. So have you seen this, Phil, this Series 12 Tom Baker Blu-ray set that's up for pre-order?
Yes, I have indeed. I shall be getting it. I won't be getting it as soon as it comes out because I've already got all the episodes, but all the stories on DVD. But it is on my wish list. Put it that way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to have a little read up on that as well. So I'm tempted by this one. I might pick this one up.
Yeah. Because also got an article on Robert Holmes as well. Yeah, so it seems to be focusing a lot on season 12 here. It was Tom Baker's first season because it's also got an interview with Roger Murray Leach as well, who is the production designer for season 12. It's something called the Holmes Master Plan.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yes, about the script of Robert Holmes for season 12. Also Kevin Lindsay, who played the Sontaran Steyer in the Sontaran Experiment. So there's an article about his life and career as well. So... and also an untold story about Doctor Who led a marketing campaign for tea bags in 1976 as well. So that sounds interesting.
He does it.
So there's quite a few articles there focusing on the classic era. So if any Who fans like my age group are whinging about the youth takeover of Doctor Who magazine, you're wrong. There's a lot of classic content there.
There seems to be plenty, which is good.
Yeah.
Because they normally do a breakdown of a classic Who story, if I remember. It runs over sort of 6 to 8 pages where they look at a classic story in detail. They break each scene down or a collection of scenes, which is quite good. But I'm quite glad that they've stuck a load of classic Who content into this one. I think the only sort of modern bit really is an interview with Georgia Tennant, it looks like.
It does actually, yes.
But that might
even
be
that, even that you couldn't really say it was modern. And how long ago was Georgia Tennant in Doctor Who? So.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I might pick this one up. So I know a lot of our listeners do sub to this, or they pick it up like you and I every now and then. But I would say this might be a good one to bag.
Yes, it does look that way.
Yeah,
it does look that way.
I normally get mine from Sainsbury's. Which is annoying because they normally wait until about 2 or 3 days after it's come out to put it on. And when I go in there, there aren't any left because I only get about 3 copies in.
I know, yeah.
So I'll have to track it down. But talking to Sainsbury's, did you hear recently about the vinyl release that they did with Big Finish?
Yes, of Energy of the Daleks.
Yeah. I couldn't find that in my Sainsbury's either.
No, me neither. I did hear a lot of other people saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, unless they literally flew off the shelves as soon as they put it down, or they just didn't have enough, as you say, like with Doctor Who magazine, they had 1 or 2 copies.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was it. Yeah.
Because I phoned them and said, Talk to me, Doctor Who. Where is it? The vinyl. And the young girl on the phone, bless her, she didn't have a clue what I was talking about. She had to go and get someone else. Like someone is asking me about a record. I don't know what a record is. Is it a vinyl? Is that like a little toy? So somebody else came on the phone, and I said, no, an LP, a double LP vinyl. She says, I know what you mean, love. No, we haven't got any. I was like, fantastic, brilliant, thank you.
Well, at least I understood what I was talking about.
Yeah, at least I didn't feel like a complete idiot, yeah. So, yeah. Doctor Who, man.
I know, I think it's a couple of episodes back, you mentioned about the, also talking about Tom Baker in season 12, about the cinema release in the US and Canada for Genesis of the Daleks.
Yeah.
Now, am I remembering correctly that you approached the BFI?
Yes.
About whether they were going to show it there or not, and you got no response. Well, they are showing it on the 23rd of June.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yes, with a Q&A with Philip Hinchcliffe afterwards.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah. So, and I'm sort of lucky enough to have got a ticket to go and see that. So,
you got a ticket, did you?
Yes. Or rather, through my co-host, who's still a member of the BFI.
Oh, nice.
So he managed to bag a couple of tickets. So.
Do you know what, mate? It was one of those situations where, because of my day job, I have to sort of zone out from social for a little while.
Yes,
otherwise I don't get anything done. I did a load of work in the morning, came back after lunch, fired Twitter up, and completely missed it, mate. They all sold out really quick.
They do sell out quick. I remember when it was in the 50th anniversary year, they were doing an event every month for each Doctor.
Right.
And a lot of them, and I purposely, that's why I joined the BFI, just so I could get tickets to these things. But being a member didn't guarantee you a ticket at all. You just had to basically enter a lottery.
Oh, right.
And you got picked out, and sometimes we were successful. More often than not, we weren't. So the Doctor Who events, the last one I went to was the Sharda.
Oh, was it that one? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, to coincide with the Blu-ray and DVD release, and that was a packed house.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was really, really good, really good. So, yeah, I mean, they are very, very popular events. They really are the Doctor Who ones. Even though they book the guests, and you probably heard them trotting out the same old stories at any convention or Q&A you've been to, but they still attract the fans there, which I think is brilliant.
They do. Really cool atmosphere as well. There's something quite unique about watching classic Doctor Who in a cinema surrounded by other Who fans. It's quite a cool way to watch it. Yeah. I think when they released Day of the Doctor in the cinema, I think we discussed this on my own podcast, because there seems to be a lot of cinema releases for episodes, like season finales and things abroad, but not over here in the UK. And I think a lot of people say, it's been pandering to the American fans and blah blah blah. Yeah. But that's how you promote the show. However, I think if you keep putting it on in the cinema, it becomes less of a special event. I agree.
And I think, and I think it should only be kept for special events. Things like Day of the Doctor, when it was like, it's the 50th anniversary. It's an event show to watch. And I did go and see it at the cinema a couple of days after it aired on television.
Right.
And it wasn't a packed cinema by any stretch of the imagination, but it was still full of fans who hadn't actually seen it yet.
Oh, right.
So you were still getting their reactions, like when Tom Baker appeared at the end, and things like that, or when you saw Capaldi's eyes.
Yes.
No, sir, all 13. You see, So you're still getting gasps of wonder from the audience, and as you say, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like watching it with other fans. There really isn't.
Yeah, it's very cool. So enjoy yourself then, Phil.
I certainly will, and we'll probably sort of discuss it on the podcast, actually. So
I know Adam's going. He managed to get a ticket, so he's going to rub that in a little bit. I know. I might sneak in. You never know. I might try and bag a ticket from. Well,
I wonder if I bump into Philip Hinchcliffe if he remembers me, because the last time I met him was at the Hooverville convention in September last year. I interviewed him. for the podcast, which is probably one of the most scariest things I've ever done.
Right.
Because I didn't actually know I was going to be interviewing him until about half an hour beforehand. So
right.
yeah. So it was a bit scary. But I had actually met him before at the Gallifrey One convention. We were on the same plane together, more or less sort of sitting almost side by side. Then we're on the same airport shuttle bus to the hotel. Then I stood behind him in the queue at the hotel, and he actually turned around to me and said, "Are you following me?" And I said, "Well, are you following me?" You know. So when I interviewed him last year, I said, "We have actually met before," and he said, "Oh, I never forget a face." So if I see him again, let's put that to the test then.
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Your
let's
mate.
Do it.
Yeah, I'm sure we can get you a ticket. Right. News and merch.
Okay.
That'll do us.
Excellent.
That'll do. So we've mentioned since the start of the show that there's been numerous things for the younger audience of Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. So let's continue that with something that's right up our age group. I remember when I asked you to come on the show, I thought, Jesus Christ, he's not going to be into this, I'm sure, but you're up for it, so that's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah. I said, we're doing Sarah Jane Adventures, and you were like, yeah, cool. I was like, bloody hell.
Yeah, and I'll explain why when we get going.
Right, yeah, okay. So,
okay.
Normally I hand over to the co-host, so you can take this bit. What are we going to review this week, Phil?
Okay, we are going to talk about Eye of the Gorgon.
The Lavender Lawns rest home is apparently being haunted by a nun.
Me? Doesn't Mr. Smith believe in ghosts?
Not as such, and neither do I.
When weirdo nuns turn up on your doorstep asking about freaky glowing alien gizmos, one thing you never do is tell them you've got one.
The talisman is dangerous, more than you can imagine.
No way! Luke!
The abbess will want to see you. The abbess?
Luke! He's been nabbed by a nun.
Are you really protecting a Gorgon here? A creature with writhing serpents for hair.
The sisters, they protect her.
Now look on the face of the Gorgon and feel your flesh turn to stone.
We have the key. Rejoice, sisters, the Gorgons shall be free!
Oh, Mother Abbess!
She's weakening. We must open the portal as soon as possible.
It's killed all these people and then put them on show, like trophies. The Gorgon has turned my father into stone. Is there a way to save him?
The talisman. It is the key to the door between this world and theirs. It returned me to flesh and blood.
You got it?
There's loads of them.
They're everywhere.
And the Gorgons have chosen a new host to lead its domination of Earth. You, listeners.
Rightio. Some of those trailers always make it sound extremely... It's almost like a mini movie.
It is actually, yeah.
So, the Eye of the Gorgon, then. It was first broadcast back in October 2007. So, what's that, 11 years ago? Nearly 11 years ago.
Oh, my God. Where's the time gone?
Yeah, indeed. It was written by Phil Ford. It was directed by Alice Troughton. And it stars the usual team that this show has set up. So, Liz Sladen as Sarah Jane, Yasmin Page as Maria Jackson, Tommy Knight as Luke Smith, Daniel Anthony as Clyde, and the voice of Alexander Armstrong as the computer Mr. Smith. And this story sees a potential haunting at the local nursing home, which is investigated by Sarah and the dudes. And when they get there, they find out that it's not really a ghost that's causing trouble. It's some brainwashed nuns that are trying to get hold of this talisman that will open up a portal so that all the other Gorgons, parasites as they're called, can enter the Earth and take over, etc. So I'm intrigued then, Phil.
Yes.
As to your interest or your agreement into doing some Sarah Jane.
Well, I'll be perfectly honest. I used to set my Skybox to record Sarah Jane.
Okay.
All the time.
Yeah.
I absolutely adored this program.
Oh, really?
I really did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the Sarah Jane Adventures. I think I'm a massive fan of the Sarah Jane Smith character.
Okay.
And when they brought her back into Doctor Who with, I've forgotten the name of the episode now. One with Tennant. Oh, that's terrible. Bad fan. Can't remember what it was. Anyway, School Reunion. That's it. School Reunion.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, on the main show. Yeah.
On the main show. Yeah. So when RTD decided to come with yet another pilot for the Sarah Jane character after K9 and Company, which was how can I put it, less than stellar. Put it that way. So when he introduced this basically as a CBBC production, I watched the pilot. It was on Christmas, wasn't it?
New Year's Day, wasn't it?
New Year's Day, that was it. Yeah. And I sort of really quite enjoyed it. It seemed to it wasn't, even from the off, it wasn't seen as Doctor Who's poor cousin, as I think like K9 and Company was. Right. There was obviously a lot of effort put into it to make it look as slick and as glossy as possible. So I was really pleased. That was Invasion of the Bane, I believe, was the pilot story.
That's right.
So Eye of the Gorgon is the second story of the first series, and they just sort of kept that up. They had a character change, didn't they? Because the Maria character wasn't in the Invasion of the Bane New Year's Day special, or the pilot episode, I should call it. It was a completely different character.
Oh, it was it's her friend, wasn't it? What's her name? I know who you mean. It was crikey. Well, we only reviewed it recently. It was Kelsey.
Kelsey,
Maria's friend. Yeah, they chopped her out, didn't they?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Replaced with Clyde, the male.
Clyde, that was it. That was it. Yeah. So, but I think this is sort of the. I think might say it's the Luke, Clyde, and Rani is probably the classic lineup. Maria was only there for just one series, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So, but anyway, I started watching it, and obviously, the first story was Revenge of the Savine, which I couldn't really abide in Doctor Who,
right,
at all, but they work in Sarah Jane because it's made for kids, basically. Yeah. It's made for a younger audience, and I think the Slovene work in that context, really. So they kicked off the series with an already previously known villain, and then started introducing their own villains into it as well. So hence this one with the Gorgon. And I really, really enjoyed this one because it kind of wears its gothic horror credentials firmly on its sleeve.
Yes,
to be honest. I mean, even down to the point of actually making a reference to the Hammer horror film, The Gorgon, as well. So I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I also think, importantly for a kids show, and this one in particular, they don't talk down to the audience.
Oh, I read you. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, in things this particular story, they're addressing things like families breaking up, someone with like Alzheimer's as well, which I know children's television is completely different to what it used to be when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I think more, television for I hate using the phrase young adults, but television for young adults, it has to address modern issues or concerns and things like that. So, which really telly nowadays didn't really do.
That's true.
Yep. So, it's totally different now, and I think that's probably why I sort of latched on to Sarah Jane. Because of the Sarah Jane character. I've always liked Liz Sladen, and I just think that most of the stories throughout its entire run, and this in particular, I think are really, really strong. And I actually preferred this to Torchwood.
Right. Okay.
If I'm honest, I never missed an episode of Sarah Jane Adventures. So, so when you asked me to, we're gonna be doing Sarah Jane, or you could do something else, I thought, no, I'd love to talk about Sarah Jane.
Wowzers, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I must admit, this is completely my fault. It's down to me because I thought, well, Phil, I'm not, he's a more mature gentleman of Doctor Who. I think it's. I'm not saying you're old by any stretch of imagination, nothing at all like that. I just thought, I'm not going to do a podcast with an 18-year-old. So, but that's down to me. That's just me being, so I thought he's not going to be up for this. That's why I gave you the option. Should we do that, or we can just ditch that and we'll do our own thing? And you were like, no, I'm totally up for it. So, that's really cool. And it's really interesting that you mentioned the way that Sarah Jane Adventures doesn't sort of patronize younger viewers, or, it presents itself in a way that everything's sort of painted by numbers. It actually, it's more direct on its themes. And you mentioned a couple there about families having a bit of a rocky situation, and elderly people with Alzheimer's and so on. And when we were younger, the TV, a lot of those themes were reserved really for sort of soaps for young adults. If you think about Neighbours and Home and Away, they used to be on when I used to get in from high school, and they were all about relationships that weren't working or were working, or broken families. You never saw it in the kind of ITV, CBB kind of those things.
No, I suppose the only thing that sort of springs to mind that might have sort of addressed sort of issues that kids were going through, I suppose, something like Biker
Grove. Yes, I was just about to say.
Yeah. And but to put that kind of thing into a sci-fi setting.
Yeah.
Really, rather than just, it's because I say it's not just pure sci-fi. That's what drives the story along. But there's also what I like about it is the characters have their own problems and issues that also help to carry the story along.
Yes,
as well.
Yep, that's right.
It's not. I used to like those episodes of Star Trek Next Generation where it was this story is going to focus on Data learning to becoming human and learning about emotions. I hated those episodes because to me it wasn't strong. It wasn't strong enough to carry a 45-minute story along.
Right.
But with this, it's all intertwined, and that's what. And Phil Ford is a really, really good writer. Anyway, I've always been a big fan of his contributions to things like Sarah Jane and Doctor Who. So I think he's a really, really good writer. So and I think the way he's constructed this story is brilliant. I really do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And what's cool about it is you mentioned Biker Grove, and I think their purpose was to actually it was more of an educational program more than an entertainment program. I think its whole purpose for being on the TV was to address certain issues, whereas that's not Sarah Jane Advent. That's not their sort of platform really to do that. It was more about the entertainment. It's part of Doctor Who, and Sarah Jane's really cool. And there's there's kids. I imagine because of the channel and how it was marketed, I think it was that the younger cast were meant to be relatable to younger viewers. It's like we could be adventurers and we could do that cool stuff as well. So that's part of it actually, because Adam and I were pleasantly surprised when we started reviewing Sarah Jane, because we've seen, out of all of the Sarah Jane episodes, we've probably seen about a third of those. We sort of dipped into it over the years and watched the odd one.
Yeah.
And every time that we've dipped into it, and especially now that we've started to review them, it's very difficult to find, not necessarily fault, but it's very difficult to blast it in the way that we might do with some Doctor Who episodes or, other things. And
I don't know why that is really, because I've always found that a bit puzzling with Who fandom, because a lot of people like to say, I'm a Doctor Who fan, but they do absolutely nothing but slag it off.
Yes.
And I thought, why do you watch it? And I think when you're sort of watching something, you have to be sort of, you can't just say, I hate it, and you come up the next week and go, I hate it. There's going to be things you don't like in each story. There's going to be things you do like. There's got to be that balance there. So I don't know why the same people could watch something like Sarah Jane and it was wonderful, I can't find fault with it, but then watch the parent show and go, oh, this week was crap. It's... Yeah, I really don't understand why there has to be this yin and yang all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got to. I mean, one of the things that we absolutely, when we first started, when Adam first jumped on the podcast, and I first asked, because I did the first few shows on my own, like the first 8 or 9, I think, by myself. And then after Adam came on as a guest and then asked him to come back as a regular co-host, one of the things, because he was a bit unsure at first.
Yeah.
It wasn't unsure, but he was, he was like, well, what's the thing, that we do? And one of the things that we sort of established early on, and one of the things that people have said is, although some of the stories might not be that strong in the main show, there's always some positivity there because we do have times when we're reviewing a show, if it's not that great, we have to sort of stop ourselves and say, look, there are some sort of not so great bits here, but come on, let's pull out some positives. Let's find some things that are, that we can get into, and is fairly cool.
Yeah.
And the contrast with Sarah Jane is that I find it more difficult to find. It's almost like it's the reverse with some of the weaker episodes of Who. It's like I find it difficult to pick out large faults with it because so far, for me, there aren't many. It just seems to be, every episode seems to bring a strong sense of just that really cool, old school sort of adventure, but also at the same time being sort of grounded, because it's not set in Who where it's always flying through space or on spaceships or anything that's far-fetched. It seems to have this sort of grounded reality to it.
Yeah. Well, I suppose when Sarah Jane Avengers first started, I think that's what modern Who, because it hadn't been going a couple of years at that point. That's really how new fans to the show saw Who, because it was rooted in reality, because you had the whole Rose Tyler and her family. A lot of the stories were rooted on Earth. She had a family that rooted her back at Earth again. So, and I think that's the Sarah Jane Adventures, particularly sort of this particular type of story. It just continued in that vein, where it just continued where like Who. Actually, I suppose at that point, Rose Tyler was still just in the show. I mean, 2007, we hadn't actually quite got to the era of Martha Jones yet either, had we?
Not quite. Yeah, not still Rose, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah, still Rose. Yeah. So I suppose really, if you're onto a winning formula, why would you break it? Really,
exactly.
Why would you do something different? And obviously, this whole thing was devised by RTD, and it's got his fingerprints all over it. But I just think it works so well in this as well. But I'm beginning to wonder whether people sort of cut it some slack because it's Sarah Jane. Everybody loves Sarah Jane. Everyone loves Liz Sladen, and also because it's a kids show and this is made for children. It's not a family show.
Yes,
as such.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I generally find that when we've when we've mentioned Sarah Jane before, and now we've started reviewing them. When I go into it to watch it for review, I tend to, I don't know if I explain this the right way, I don't sort of lower my expectations because I know it's a children's show, but I seem to have a different sort of tolerance for it because of its target market.
I know what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? So I think because, if I was to, view it in the same way that when we review something from New Who or Classic Who, that seems, I tend to make that, it sounds ridiculous, but whenever I watch those sort of the main show, I tend to make it a bit of an event for me. I'm not one of these people that just, casually will watch, 6 episodes of Classic Who, like in the middle of the, I always tend to be like, right, I'm going to set this time. It sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to set this time aside. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to get a cup of tea. I'm going to get Who on. But with Sarah Jane, I don't feel that way necessarily. It's like, right, I can watch this easily while I'm having my dinner. It's not too much of a problem. Because it doesn't really sort of tax your brain too much because of the target audience. So that's the good thing about it. It's good entertainment.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You don't have to sort of shut the world out to watch this, really, do you?
Exactly.
You don't have to have that same level of concentration as perhaps you sometimes need with a Doctor Who serial. Yeah. So, but I think that's why. But I just coming back from I never missed an episode.
That's
I
really cool.
Didn't.
Yeah, really cool.
Really did. I absolutely adored it. So, but as I say, this particular story, it's to do sort of like almost like a gothic horror for children's television, which really we haven't really seen since, to my mind anyway, because obviously I don't watch a lot of children's television. But that kind of thing was big in the 70s. So, I mean, when I was a kid, you had things like Children of the Stones, which scared the living daylights out of me. It was one of the most unsettling children's shows. And there was another one called Sky, as well as like this sort of alien that sort of fell to Earth. But one of the abiding things that I remember about that, and again, it scared me witless, was he appeared out of the forest floor. So he sort of rose up like the dead. It scared the hell out of me. But I'll always remember it, though. That's the thing. It's always in my mind. So I'm hoping that kids, when they watch this, will remember the scary nuns.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And the Gorgon with the shroud over her face and all that. And I've tried to introduce. Okay, my kids are 5 years old, and I've tried to introduce them to Sarah Jane Adventures, and we've only got as far as this story.
Okay, right.
Because as soon as my daughter saw the Gorgon's face, that was it. She was done. She was out the room. Turn it off, Andy. She was done. That was it.
Oh,
so I might have to wait a couple of years before we get to watch the rest of it. But yeah, so really, I mean, for I think modern television is kind of scared of scaring children now.
Yeah.
Everything's got to be safe and mustn't offend anybody. And I think with this kind of thing, they're trying to do like gothic horror for children's television, and I think they did it really well.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a ghostly nun. You've got this horrible aged creature in a wheelchair with the talons, or it's like overgrown fingernails, and yeah, really horrible looking. You've got the nuns driving around kidnapping children. They're driving around in a hearse, for God's sake, you know. So yeah, it's all there. It is all there.
Yeah,
and you know, you've got the magic talisman. Okay, that's the MacGuffin of the.
I love that saying. Yeah, the MacGuffin. Yeah,
the MacGuffin.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just a really, really good children's adventure story.
Yes, it is. Yep. And I like the fact that you mentioned some of the shows when we were younger that used to sort of give us the willies. And I'm hoping, this sounds bad, but I'm hoping that there are children that do and were scared of this, because it's one of those. You know, I don't mean to give kids nightmares or anything that harsh, but it is one of those sort of nostalgia things that when, like you and I are talking about it now, when they grow up and they talk about it with their friends or whatever, it is one of those elements that makes the show sort of stick in your mind. So there was a couple of things for me when I was growing up that used to really give me the creeps. There was one called The Witches and the Grinnygog.
Oh, yes, I've heard of that.
Which is a very bizarre, strange program. It used to scare the life out of me. I mean, looking back on it now, it's hilarious. But at the time, it's The Box of Delights was another one. That was just a creepy, story-based thing. And
we've actually made watching. We started that a couple of years ago. Just thinking, would the kids watch it? And we've made it almost like a Christmas tradition now. Is leading up to Christmas, we'll watch an episode of Box of Delights.
Yep.
Each night during the course of a week. Yeah. So, and they love it.
Oh, cool.
They absolutely love it. Yeah. Because it's a strange beast, that program, that weird mix of, the animation and live action and CSO and everything. Yep. And again, it's almost gothic again. You've got using what you would normally associate with, like in this story, either Gorgon, nuns. Peaceful, meant to be caring. I say meant to be, but yeah. But in Box of Delights, you've got the vicars, the priests, and they're the most menacing, threatening, creepy people you've seen in a children's television serial.
Absolutely,
yeah. So, and I do like it when they do use these sort of. Religious aspects and use it to a threatening or unsettling effect. I would say, it keeps the viewers, especially younger viewers, on their toes a little bit. But kids love to be scared. That's the thing. They do. I think it's all. No, we mustn't. No, they do. Kids love to be scared, and they do keep and they will keep coming back for more.
Mm-hmm. It's a good formula. Yeah.
It is a good formula. Another program I used to be absolutely petrified of was the Tomorrow People.
Oh, the Tomorrow, bloody hell! Yep.
Yeah, and it wasn't actually the program itself; it was the opening titles.
I know what you mean. Yep.
Yeah, because Dudley Simpson's theme for that is really quite creepy, and you put it together with the titles with that the hand that comes towards the screen.
Yes,
it was that scared me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did run out of the room when that came on. As soon as I heard the music finished, I'd come back in the room again. But I did this religiously, week after week. So, I love to be scared. It was great.
I know what you mean. It keeps you coming back for more. It's almost like it's almost like a sort of a mini addiction, if you like. You just want to be scared. I remember being like that with the really old, the original Hulk series that used to be on. When he used to start turning into the Hulk, before he used to turn into the Hulk properly, there was a scene where he just had these like really bright green contact lenses in.
Yeah.
And that used to literally petrify me. The same as you, I used to run out of the living room. Yeah. But then next week when it was on, I was back there on the sofa watching it, and I knew it was coming. You know that it's coming. But,
exactly. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that kids have that feeling. Like I said, I don't wish, sort of ill on kids or give them nightmares.
No, exactly.
But I wish that they had that sort of element when they're watching Sarah Jane, where it's like, right, there's going to be a scary bit coming up. There's going to be a scary bit. So I hope that, and I think for the most part they achieve that. If we think about stories like this as an example, like you said with the Gorgon, like the really old nun with the long fingernails, and when they lift the veil, the hood up, she does look pretty scary. Like when she pulls quite a scary face and stuff. I would be scared if, thinking back to my sort of 5-6-year-old or 7-year-old self, that would have been me out of the room. See you later.
Well, that's what I like. They don't pull any punches with that at all. No. It's not sort of they lift the shroud or the veil, what we call it, and you only catch a quick glimpse, or it's shown from a certain angle or in shadow or something. No, it's there, front and centre.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's brilliant. I think it was absolutely brilliant. And as I say, the thing within the old people's home as well, with Philida Law as B, the character with the Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
I thought she was brilliant. I really think she was fantastic. And they didn't sort of do even at the spoilers at the end when Maria thinks that perhaps the talisman can cure her of her Alzheimer's.
Oh, right,
and it doesn't.
Yeah.
There was no. She had the happy ending when her dad was. He was turned to stone during the course of the story, and that was reversed by the talisman. And she was thinking, well, we've got to try. We've got to try and sort of save B.
Yeah,
because she helped me, and of course it doesn't work like that. So what I liked, it wasn't a case of this MacGuffin can cure everything.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't. It wasn't a totally happy ending. Sort of like life goes on in its own weird, wonderful, and sad ways.
Exactly. Yeah, it provides that sort of emotional sort of structure. Good things are built upon those sort of life experiences, if you like. So because they could have played it very easily that way. They could have played it in a very light and fluffy. Everything's magical and brilliant. And everything has a wonderful happy ending, like you say. So it's nice that Maria's very upset that it didn't work. But then Sarah Jane's like, actually, she's found peace now, and so it does provide those more mature themes, but wrapped up in a way that a younger audience can understand. And I think the good thing about that, I mean, you mentioned Phil Ford earlier being a really good writer. One of the things that I think really makes this show what it is they didn't hire writers that specialize in writing for children's programs, which they sometimes do with this target audience. So Phil Ford before this had written predominantly adult dramas, so Bad Girls, The Bill, footballers' wives, Corrie, that sort of thing. He had written very much for, especially Bad Girls. That's very, very adult and, you know, sort of 18 rated, if you like. But then he jumps into Sarah Jane and then lands a couple of gigs on Torchwood and Doctor Who. He co-wrote The Waters of Mars, which is one of the best Tennant stories,
I know a few people who don't really care for Water of Mars, to be honest, because to them it's just relentless in its doom and gloom. And I think if you had that every week, then fine. I think that those criticisms would be justified. But I think it was an absolutely rollicking story, Waters of Mars, and it didn't let up. It just maintained the pace, all the way through. And it is one of my favourites. I think it's one of the best stories that they gave Tennant to do.
It is, yeah.
Actually, I really do. So, but as you say, they've got these writers on for Sarah Jane, and I think going back to Class again, you had Patrick Ness who wrote for it. He was he wrote for the young adult market. Maybe if they'd have engaged some other writers who've written for a different target audience, maybe they could have brought something different to it, and maybe that could have got other audience more engaged with it, perhaps. You know, I mean, it's easy to say in hindsight, but I mean, as I said before, I enjoyed it for what it was anyway. You know, so but this is what I liked about the Sarah Jane Adventures. They didn't treat it like Doctor Who's poor cousin. They put the same amount of effort and love into it.
Absolutely, yes. And we commented that when we reviewed the pilot, because it does feel very much like an RTD era Doctor Who. When you're watching it, it's got that same. It almost feels like sort of both production teams were talking to each other, or they shared responsibilities across the shows, because the way it's edited and put together and the way the music flows through it, and because Russell's so great at writing good characters and setting those up, it does feel like, you know, I know his sort of fingerprints were over this anyway, just like with Doctor Who, but it definitely feels like that good old RTD era programming.
Yes, it does, yeah.
And although the budget might not have been quite as much as the main show, you can tell that they've made the most of what they have got, and the production's quite good. And
exactly.
Yes, it doesn't feel like it's like the off cuts of Who and just do what you want with it. You can tell that it's had a lot of thought and love put into it, and so I'm totally with you on that one. It does feel like
it just jumps out of the screen. I mean, it does to me anyway. And I think it's that thing, because it's I think certainly in my day, children's television, if they did sort of like, you know, serials, sometimes they could look a bit sort of cheap looking. But with this, no, it doesn't. It's slick, it's glossy.
Yeah.
You know, which is what modern audiences expect these days. They don't expect it. But that's the thing when Doctor Who came back. I didn't actually know what to expect.
Okay.
To be honest, I thought, is it going to be like the studio-bound videotape thing? But no, what you watch is like a mini movie each week.
Yes, absolutely.
And what they're doing with what they did with the Sarah Jane Adventures was try and replicate that. They had that winning formula for Doctor Who. They attempt to do exactly the same thing. Maybe not on quite the same budget, as you said, but they gave it everything. They really did give it everything.
Indeed.
And and it's absolutely brilliant. It really is.
It's very cool. What did you think before we just mention a couple of the performances quickly? I know we've mentioned B, and she mentions her husband quite a few times. Do you think that there was, because I quite like that they interjected some of that. I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about when we mentioned Class earlier. So with Class, aside from the Capaldi cameo, everything else sort of rolled along, but with hardly any mention or reference to anything else in Who, which is why I stand by my point of view that it really should have been its own thing outside. It shouldn't have been a Doctor Who thing, possibly. Anyway, in this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. So with Bee's character, she mentioned her husband and how they used to sort of be adventurers and they went off and did stuff. And then she has these like little references that they're subtle enough but you can't miss them either. So she says, when Sarah Jane and Maria go to see her, she's like, she mentions the Centaurans and they look like a giant potato and that sort of thing. It's those really nice little references. And it's not even from newer Doctor Who that the show is based on. She's referencing classic Who.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that they've inserted those little references to Who, but they don't take over the show. It's just enough there for you to sort of latch onto and think, right, so she's embedded within the world of Doctor Who.
Exactly, yeah.
But she's not a main character. Yeah.
No, I think when they did that from the off of this, really, because, Sarah mentions, like, I think it was in the Invasion of the Bane, she mentions, like, Harry Sullivan and the Brigadier.
Yes, yeah.
And things like that. So we knew who she was talking about, but new viewers who watch this for the first time, just come into this completely cold, have absolutely no idea. But it does add to that Sarah Jane has got history somewhere.
Yes, yeah.
That is connected to the parent show, and I think that's what makes people go, okay, I'm going to find out a little bit more about that. Who's she talking about? So you go into Google, Harry Sullivan. So you start, and then you start getting into the classic era of Doctor Who. I like that it just sows the seeds.
Yes.
Of to sort of like get people interested.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's not in your face either. It's very subtly done. She doesn't actually say Harry Sullivan. She just says Harry. Or the Brig.
Or the Brig.
Something like
yeah. And Sarah Jane's reaction to this when she says about the Centaurans, Sarah Jane she's shocked initially. She's like, you know the Centaurans, and then that's it. That scene's done and dusted. So I like it. I like that it's enough for existing fans, like you say, to know what's going on, but newer fans are like, what are Centaurans then? And if on the off chance they give it a Google and then Centauran comes up and it's part of Doctor Who and end up watching an episode.
That's right.
And then that's it. They're in. They're hooked. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I know sort of like a lot of Who fans moan about the amount of continuity references in modern Doctor Who. But really, I think it's. I just find it really weird because like, old fans, they sort of, it's not referencing the old show enough, and then when they do, it's too much. But I think, well, really, I'm beginning to wonder, would they complain about this as well? Those same people, because it is referencing classic Who. Because obviously, when the reference of the Centaurans, at this point, they hadn't actually popped up in New Who yet. They were still a classic era villain, weren't they?
Yeah.
So, I think that's what I love about Sarah Jane. There is something for everybody.
Yes.
In this,
yeah.
I really do. And I think it's only just suddenly sort of dawned on me as we've been discussing this. So when people are, really excited about Jodie Whittaker stepping into the TARDIS and saying, that it's the first female Doctor and so on. But I think if you watch the Sarah Jane Adventures, this is our first female Doctor. She is the Doctor in this, in all but name, to be honest. So
that's interesting you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really do think so. She's got she's got her companions. She's got a sonic device. She's got her own. I mean, basically her attic. With Mr. Smith, that is basically her TARDIS.
Her TARDIS, yes, yeah,
Yeah,
so you make a cracking point there, because I think prior to this, she would always be viewed as a companion.
Yeah,
and I think the episode School Reunion that we touched on earlier was probably the best thing that could have happened for her character.
Yes,
because I like that that Tennant's Doctor in that episode essentially sets this show up, really, because he has a conversation with her and says, look at you, you're still doing it. You're investigating. You're still,
that's right,
doing your thing. And then that's it. That's the little cord that you pull on slowly that, that unravels more of her story and more of her adventures. So that's just a brilliant mind that Russell T Davies has got, though. He's got this.
Oh God, yeah.
In his head, it's all happening.
Yeah, I mean, the end of that School Reunion, the Doctor gives her a new rebuilt K9, and they both go off always into that story, you would assume off into the sunset. That's it, really. It sort of kind of gave Sarah Jane and the Doctor a bit of closure after he dropped her off in Scotland rather than Croydon that time.
Yeah.
So it just sort of sets her up. She got off into the sunset to have her own adventures, and then lo and behold, RTD thinks no, there is potential in this, and Sarah Jane is a great character because I mean, you know, I think it's the one. I think it's her and Ace really are the characters that everybody really remembers from the classic era. If you're going to reel off the classic era companions, it's going to be Sarah Jane and Ace, maybe Leela in there as well. Actually,
right, yeah, no, yeah, that's good. And the other thing that is that's quite nice, it doesn't. I think we mentioned it, but it doesn't shove the references to Who down your face too much.
No, it doesn't. No,
and all the episodes that we've watched so far, like I said, we haven't seen all of them, but the ones we've seen so far, I don't come away feeling right. That was just a marketing exercise for Doctor Who. You know, that was, you know, those references are put in there for a good reason. It's to progress the story and the characters. It's not just, oh, look, everybody, we're a Doctor Who show, just in case you didn't know. So, you know,
here's another reference for you.
Yeah, here's another one. You can almost, but like one of those little ding timers every time you. I don't feel that way at all. It just feels like it's a natural sort of progression, really.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
same here.
What did you think to? Just before we get on to our review scores, then, what did you think to some of the performances in this? We spoke about B. What did you think to the main cast, really? So, the character, like the leader of the nuns, if you like, she was quite a forceful.
Yes, she was, Beth Goddard. Yeah, I think the only thing I can think of her being in was Gimme, 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 actually. She was one of the neighbours, I think, wasn't she? But I thought on the whole she was really good. I suppose at the end, where they sort of start to open the portal to allow the Gorgons through, it sort of kind of goes into slightly pantomime or sort of like, and tomorrow I shall take over the world. It's a bit. Yeah. It does go a little bit like that, but I think again because it is I suppose in a certain way, as I said, we're cutting it some slack because it's a children's show.
Yes, yeah,
really, you know. But to be honest, you get the same sort of performance in Doctor Who at the end when they're summoning their army from the other side of the universe. You always get a bit of histrionics. So, yeah, it's not really out of place.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
And to be honest with you, we've got the real camp over-the-top performances out the way. So in the previous one, we've injured the Slovene, the school teachers.
Yes.
They are really chewing the woodwork. So we've got them out of the way. So this isn't too bad in comparison.
Exactly, yeah. But that's what I say. I think the Slovene work well as a children's TV villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they are quite comical with the farting and the base their look as well, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
So in this, as I said, you've got the Beth Goddard doesn't quite chew the scenery at the end, but it starts to the performance level starts to rise a little bit. So but it's fine though. It's absolutely fine. I'm not sort of saying it's a detraction from the story at all.
Yeah,
it works.
Yeah,
you know.
We've got Maria's parents in this one, so they're still going through their sort of
their divorce stage, aren't they?
Yeah. She's very much, she'll just land and take advantage whenever she likes. He's trying to provide some stability. There's a little bit of tension there. And I think this is one of those episodes where Maria really feels it. You know, she breaks down a couple of times. And I think that's what we were speaking about. So they weren't shy in coming forward with broken families and that sort of circumstance, if you like.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think what they're highlighting there, and I think it's quite important when sort of families split up. It doesn't just affect the people, the parents who are splitting up. It's the fallout of that, and I think this is what this was addressing.
Yes,
really, it's the fallout of that, and it's when those two people sort of do meet, but they're not together. It must be a very, very weird situation for a kid to be in. Really, where they know the parents they've gone their separate ways, and as Maria says in this, it's not just a piece of paper. a divorce
That's
as far as
right.
she's concerned. There's more to it, which is absolutely right. It is, divorce is, or anybody breaking up, it is more than just a piece of paper.
Especially when there's kids involved, like this situation here. If she's
yeah.
So I think so that's a good point. Actually, she does say to her dad, "For you, it's the divorce is a bit of paper to say you're no longer married, but for me, I have to deal with you too, doing whatever you're doing." And
exactly, you sort of like you're still my parents, but you're leading separate lives now.
Yeah, and she plays that really well. Actually, the way
she does,
I think Yasmin Page. I think we mentioned this last time as well. She has a few scenes where she properly goes for it. Like those scenes in this one where she's, she's had to put on this act of being, pretty upset about what's going on. But you couldn't really take away the fact that she's really given it some in some of those scenes. She's quite So some great performances. What do you think to the other two then? So we got Clyde, Daniel Anthony, who's playing his typical streetwise, a bit of a lad, and then you've got Luke, sort of the contrast to that, who's still learning the ropes of being normal everyday life, really.
Yeah, I think this is the thing about this, because this is obviously in the first series, and we're just getting to know the characters. And what I loved about this, as you say, Luke is still learning about things like in this, like Clyde's trying to tell him, you don't have to tell the truth every single time you're asked the question. So like he gives away about the thing about the talisman to Sister Helena. So what I like about it, all the characters do have their own arc throughout the series. So and it continued right up to the end of series 5. They were still going through their own character arcs, which I really, really, really liked. But I think Daniel Anthony as Clyde, I always liked the Clyde character. Actually, I always thought he was really good. I think the Luke character is really good as well. I think I really cannot fault the acting of that trio of kids in this at all, to be honest.
Right.
Because I think all of them pitch it just right. Because sometimes with child actors, they can't always portray that emotion that's required a lot of the time.
Right.
If I'm going to use something in particular from Doctor Who, actually, Nightmare in Silver.
Oh, crikey. Yeah.
Now, the child actors in that were, I'm sorry to say, were appalling. And I don't know if that was just the lines they were given, but to have like, I hate you, that's such a pat line to sort of like to give a teenage character.
Of course, yeah.
But there's none of that in the Sarah Jane Adventures.
It's fairly genuine, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think the performances are genuine as well.
Yes, and I think that comes down again to hiring writers that have had experience in writing proper dramas. They're not just writing kiddies programs. So the expectation is to make it kiddie because that's the only thing that I write. Is Mr. Tumble, whatever it might be. It's right.
They write that stuff, do they?
They've actually got writers who have, worked on storylines that are emotional and, have sort of real life, experience built into it. So, the more I talk about it, the more I really appreciate, the stuff that's gone into Sarah Jane. Because I think a lot of people, they on face value, which was my mistake earlier when I asked you about it, I thought on face value, Phil might just look at this a bit of a stupid kids show, and that's all. A lot of people view it as. But when you sort of dive into it a little bit, I'm not saying that listeners should pick it apart this much, every time they watch it. But the more you dig into it and talk about it, the more you realise just how much has gone into make it the show that it is really.
Yeah, I think if you look at the other spin-off show that was around at the same time was Torchwood, and I still firmly believe now that the Sarah Jane Adventures was more adult than Torchwood.
Okay, in terms of its themes.
Because Torchwood sort of like, okay, we're making this for adults, we'll just put lots of sex and swearing in it. And there's more to, and to be honest, it was like especially the first series, which was really, really uneven. It was like a 15-year-old's version of Sex and Swearing as well. I just found it really, 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 really juvenile. I really did.
Okay.
So they went to the extreme about how can we make this show really adult? We'll put sex and swearing into it. With this, Sarah Jane Adventures, which is made for children, they still got adult themes in there without reverting to the extremes of adult themes, if you take my meaning.
I read you.
So so I mean things like Alzheimer's, breaking up of families. You would think which are themes throughout this story. You think that's quite an adult theme. It's not really for kids TV or kids science fiction TV series, but they do it and it works really well.
Yeah.
It helps to underpin the characters, underpin the story, and it in place it does drive the story along as well. So I think it's actually superior to Torchwood.
That's interesting you say that. Yeah, because I mean, as we've gone through, you've got the horror element, you've got the adult themes and storylines and how it's written, but it's all seamlessly packaged into a CBBC. Yeah, I mean, you can't fault that really.
No. You really can't. You really can't. I know I'm sort of. I don't want to skip to the end of the series, but unfortunately, as we all know, it came to a very sad and abrupt end.
Yes.
Sarah Jane Adventures. What I was really, really surprised, and it actually sort of, warms the cockles of my cynical heart. Really, was the fact that it was the absolute outpouring of emotion from young fans of Liz Sladen who watched her in the Sarah Jane Adventures. From my point of view, or fans of of my age, it's going to be that's Sarah Jane from Doctor Who. Liz Sladen has passed away, but for the kids who watch this is Sarah Jane from the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Yes.
And I just say the outpouring of emotion that came out was that just proved to me what a fantastic show the Sarah Jane Adventures was, and really still is. Really,
it's still completely watchable. Even in today's kids shows that have moved on a little bit in terms of their delivery, But this is if I put this on now for my son. I mean, we watched this one earlier. We watched this one earlier over dinner, and he was asking me questions. Why has she got that thing, and why is the computer talking, and what are they doing, and why are the nuns doing this? So even like somebody like my son who's 11 tomorrow, and he watches like a bunch of cartoons and other TV shows that are not like Sarah Jane at all, because it's that generation, it's that era. He was still engaged and he was still into it and asking questions. So it's completely watchable still, even today.
It is. It really is. It really is.
Okay, and then lastly, Liz Sladen then. So would you say, one thing that I said to Adam when we first started doing it is that Liz Sladen, whether you look at her in a Tom Baker story or a Sarah Jane Adventure story, she's completely consistent every time.
Yes,
every
time.
She
is. Yeah. I think she's total commitment to the story, whatever story the story was for that particular week. She never... how can I put it? She never seemed to coast in the role.
Yes, true. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, she was firmly committed to it all the time. And, a lot of actors, to get up to like the 5th series or something, usually get to like series 3 and I'm a bit bored and I want to move on to other things, as we know with the rotation of actors who play the Doctor.
Yeah.
But no, she obviously really enjoyed making this, to keep making it for 5, enter it into its 5th series, and there didn't appear to be any kind of hints that she was bored with the role or wanted to leave. She just appeared to love making it, and I think as we said, obvious to us, watching this, it's the crew of the show loved making it as well. And yes. I think that thing kind of carries through from your lead actor. If they're committed to it, if they want to make it the best it can be, then that sort of carries the production crew along with them.
Absolutely, yeah. So I completely agree. I never ever, whenever I see Sarah Jane, I never once think, she's not really, because a few times when we reviewed some classic Who,
Yeah.
There's a couple of Peter Davison stories where you can tell that he's not really into the story too much, and you can tell that in his performance. You can just you just get a feeling that he's not really into that particular script or story.
Well, if you listen to any of the commentaries, if they get like him and Janet Fielding together, they like when Adric was killed in Earthshock, they're actually trying to stifle giggles.
They're cracking up, yeah.
They're cracking up. So but if you look closer, you can see Sarah Sutton is actually almost laughing when she's supposed to be crying.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when they actually sort of say, I was actually nearly wetting myself at that point through laughter. You can tell, they weren't really into it. And I must admit, a lot of the Davison era serials weren't that great, to be honest. There was a couple of good ones in there, but a lot of it was, you think the scripts were kind of coasting. I think the actors sort of kind of treated it like that as well, to be honest. Yeah.
But I don't get that feeling, though, with any of Liz Sladen's stories.
No.
She, like you said, she always seems like she's totally into it and she's committed. And you can't, I mean, it's sad that it ended the way it. I would just love to have seen more. I'd love to have heard her on some more Big Finish. And, she's just so good. She's so good.
You really did feel that she had more to give.
Absolutely.
With that character. Yeah. Certainly. Yeah.
Rightio. Eye of the Gorgon, then. I think overall it's fairly positive. We're going to go to scores. Guests first, out of 10.
Okay, out of 10.
Yeah.
Do you know what? For me, 10 out of 10. It's a solid 10.
A solid 10?
Me.
Wow.
A solid 10. I honestly cannot find anything wrong with this story whatsoever. I absolutely loved it. I really did.
Nice one. Okay. I'm going to give this an 8.5.
Okay.
And that sounds a lot lower than yours, but it's not. The reason why I get 8.5 is initially I wrote down an 8, but then I thought, no, I really, really enjoyed this one. It had all the elements in it that make it, so I gave it another score. And the reason for that is because I've got a lot more Sarah Jane to watch.
Yes.
So, I'm just sort of, what's the word? I'm from what I've been told and, from what our listeners have said, there is some even better Sarah Jane stories coming up round the corner. So, but
and there are. So
right, cool. An 8.5 for me, which is a really good score. For out of 10, I would say.
Okay.
We did have some listeners jump in as we do each week.
Good.
We had an audio review as well. This is George Puddy.
Hello, Gar and Adam. Hope you guys are well. So, The Eye of the Gorgon. After the shambles that was Revenge of the Slevene, it was quite refreshing to have a good SJA story. I like the use of Greek mythology in this story, and the SJ team worked well in this story. It's nice to see Luke and Clyde taking centre stage, with Maria not having as much to do as she was featured heavily in the previous two stories. As I said, I like the use of Greek mythology in this story. It's nice to see a link to Medusa, and that Gorgon was quite an interesting villain, and the nuns were quite sinister. Liz Sladen's great as always, and overall it's a story of a good quality. I give The Eye of the Gorgon an 8 out of 10. P.S. Where the hell is K9? I thought he would have appeared by now. See you guys next week.
Thank you very much, George. Over on Twitter, we did the normal poll where we asked you guys if it was likey or stinky, and 88% of you said likey, which left only 12% with stinky.
Oh, that's a good ratio, though.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
88%. That's overall, that's a good score. We did have a few comments on Twitter. Cindy Lou Hoovian. She said this is a beautiful and touching story, especially those society sidelines like B with the Alzheimer's. The immense value of friends and family, and the Gorgon plot is rather interesting. And the effects aren't the best, but all in all, a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
Which is not too bad. Sammy Satine from Down Under, she says, I like this one. B is interesting. I like how they used the Greek mythology creature and applied some Doctor Who logic to it. I want to know what the nuns did after the Gorgon was defeated, as serving it was their whole purpose. Also, what about the statues? 7 Gorgons out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a good point, actually. But the statues, yes, that's a good point.
Well, just nice lawn ornaments, I suppose.
I suppose so. Yes.
Just leave them where they are, I suppose. Sarah Louise Baggett says, this episode for me is where Sarah Jane really takes off and becomes more than just for children. An intriguing storyline full of suspense and at times quite dark, but punctuated with the comedic moments along the way. All performances were delivered. A thoroughly enjoyable watch. 9 out of 10. And we had one more over here, I think, which was... no, we didn't. That was it for Twitter. Over on Facebook, on the official Facebook page, Charlie Turner says, not standout for me in the Sarah Jane Adventures, but I'll admit it has good ideas here and there, particularly the Gorgon itself being like a Medusa in a way that I love. And the cliffhanger where Maria's dad was turned to stone was good. 7.5, reasonable score. Lewis Palmer says, a story that terrified me as a child. The nuns are very creepy. It's a good story and shows what the show's got. The show's got legs, and it can be pretty dark when it wants to be, which is a nice contrast to last week's episode. The actress who played the Abbess also appeared in Amy's Choice as Mrs. Poggett.
Oh, right. Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
And she's incredibly effective there as well. Having Alan turned to stone add some personal stakes as well. Overall good story, 8 out of 10. Joseph Howarth, an episode that I kept watching over and over when I was younger. He says, God, I miss those repeats on CBBC. This one's pretty dark and the cliffhanger in part 1 was good. Bringing Maria upset and her dad full circle once he gets turned to stone. A lot of good ideas in this one. I love how the Gorgon itself is a version of Medusa. 8 out of 10. And lastly, Dean Jones says, really enjoyed this story. Really engaging towards the end. Touching story. The cast are great as ever. Solid villains and has a more balanced tone than Revenge of the Slitheen. My only major criticism is Maria's mother, although the payoff at the end was quite funny. 8.5.
Good.
So overall, I'd say fairly positive with this one. A lot of fans.
Yes, I think so. Yes. There's a lot of love for this story.
Indeed, which is good.
Yeah.
Because normally we do have a bit of a swing either way. Sometimes you're a bit Marmite, sometimes you're a bit in the middle. But, I mean, overall, you can't argue with 88%.
No, exactly. I think that's a very, very respectable score.
Indeedy.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going back to Classic Who. It's going to be a Tom Baker story. It's the Mask of Mandragora, which is one that we put off from last month because we had to cancel week 2 last month. So we've moved it forward to this one. I've kept all of your reviews and everything from last month, but I will put it out on social again next Monday. If you want to have a look, or those of you that didn't comment before, you can send in your thoughts and reviews on that one. So the Tom Baker. Yes. Mask of Mandragora.
and another Sarah Jane's Avenger as well, really.
Yeah, well, absolutely,
yeah. Yeah, so
that's
good. Yeah. Have you seen it before?
I've seen it. I've not seen it in a little while, but from what I remember, yeah, Sarah Jane was good.
Yes.
But that's no surprise.
Indeed.
Before we close out, what have you got coming up on your show, if anything?
Yes, well, actually, I think what we're doing next, we're returning to our Christopher Eccleston retrospective.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we're up to Father's Day at the moment. So,
right.
So that should be coming up next on the Who See podcast.
Oh, nice one. So the most recent one is episode 300, and that's like a sort of celebration and milestone in your podcast. So, what I shall do, listeners, is I'll put a link to Phil's podcast, his website, and the link to iTunes and so on. So make sure you go and check out Phil's podcast. It's very, very good. I've listened to it for years now, and it does keep me company during the week when I'm working through many hours of rubbish with the day job.
It's, that's thank you very much. That's nice. That's nice. Thank you.
It's cool. So I'll put a link to that. Make sure you go and give Phil a subscribe and all that jazz. And I think we're going to do there for 189. Thank you for joining us and sticking with us for 189. It's been really cool to finally have a couple of bits of news and merch to talk about. The tumbleweed has stopped drifting past the window. I'm not sure how long that's going to continue, but yeah, it's very cool to actually have something to talk about. Enjoy yourself, Phil, when you go to the BFI to watch Genesis.
Thank you very much. I'm sure I will.
Not that I'm jealous or anything. Remember to speak to your mate, Mr. Hinchcliffe.
Yes, we'll do.
I'm sure he can sneak me in if I bring him a bottle of something.
I dare say. Yeah. me and Phil, we're dead close, yeah.
Yeah. Or just tell him you're just going to stalk him a little bit more. Just follow him around. Rightio. In the meantime, head over to our website, www.bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. You can listen to all of our previous shows on there. Plus, you can link off to all the usual social stuff to give us a like and a follow. We do chat about who during the week in between the shows. Plus, we have articles that go out, etc. If you can find us on iTunes and all the other podcast networks, give us a sub on there so you don't miss a show when it goes out on the Friday. And if you're an iTunes listener, if you could spare a minute for a review and a rating, that would be awesome, because that really helps. My co-host, who is not with us today, give him a firm mention as always. He runs his own YouTube channel, The Geek's Handbag. He does loads of unboxings and reviews and all sorts of geek nonsense over there. So you can give him a sub on that. And he's also on all the socials, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Next week, for episode 190, as I said, it's a Tom Baker story, The Mask of Mandragora, so get your DVDs out, or whatever else you've got. Maybe you've got a VHS, who knows? I'm sure there are plenty of you out there who still have the VHS.
Yes, there must be. Keeping that carrying the torch for VHS.
Absolutely, yes. Let's get the top loader out. So we'll be asking you for your reviews on that. So and I'll keep the ones that you did previously. So, anyways, until next week. My name is Gary,
and my name was Phil.
And give me an Alonzi, Phil.
Alonzi.